ago, and it was the Myron Gaines Fuentes and Andrew Tate debate. Very enlightening and informative. They drilled down into a lot of the subjects and dispelled a lot of the misinformation that you can easily find on the internet and social media. I know everybody will have a perspective on who they are, what they represent. Fuentes is generally seen as the far right type personality, for better or worse, and they're all mates off screen, which brings up an interesting point where it comes to the accusations of racism or being one way or the other. And they dispel a lot of these misinformed perspectives, and they go into a lot of relevant subjects that I think will mean a lot to most of us, because they touch on politics. And the bit that really got my attention was when they talked about other big figures on the internet and social media and the beefs that often really have a lot to do with the way people interact online, and how quickly from a little seed these disputes could build and grow, when often when you look into it there's nothing much behind it. You know, if they pick up the phone and speak to each other off camera, these things can often be clarified and squashed. So it's just the nature of things. What I want to do though is, it's a long video. You can watch the full length on Myron Gaines' YouTube channel, Fresh and Fit, and also other social media platforms, of course. So I'll put that information in the description. And we're just going to cover the front end, the center, and when they wrapped up to move off of YouTube. And I think it continued on, it's about 2 hours plus debate. It continued on other platforms. So what I've done is I've taken the liberty of making a sort of summary, like my assessment of what I was able to extract from the debate. There were so many points of information and illumination, shall I say, starting with managing their movements, or when I say movements, I mean their followings. As you know, each one of them have built massive followings on social media and in the culture. They spoke a lot about that. Where do you go when you reach that size and the responsibility over all those different characters that kind of hang on your every word, and for better or worse. So they begin with talking about, or at least part way into the debate, managing their movements, individual movements, managing online and in the culture as a whole. Their criticisms of other influencers and key social media commentators like Candice Owens, to name but a few. And there's also Tucker Carlson and Milo. There's a reference where Andrew Tate gives an example of something he retweeted, and Fuentes responded to that, kind of took it the wrong way, not quite knowing what was behind it. So he breaks it down that he wasn't even putting much thought into it. The guy had backed him, got in his corner previously during some, things that were going on online, and he had a level of respect for the guy. So he retweeted one of his stories. So unbeknownst to Fuentes, he's thinking, oh, this looks like it's tactical. So a lot of these beefs online and a lot of what goes on in the political culture are engineered. Anyway, to move on, they talk about people like those I've just mentioned and how they fall out only to come together and often, meet on a common point of view once they've got to actually talk to each other. So there's misinformation, right and left wing views, being labeled as an extremist when they became red pilled. Myron kind of had some questions he put to both Fuentes and Tate and himself. And it's very interesting when you hear how they answer some of these questions. So what made them see the world as it really is, referring to the red pill moment from their unique points of view, you could say. The Matrix in reference to social control and global politics, the culture of fear and how it's used to suppress and our thoughts and actions, feminism and the matriarchy. One thing they all have in common is they've all been targeted for speaking out, as most of us have seen, social media, and have all paid on social media, and they've all paid a harsh penalty at some point for their personal and public views. A lot of this is the fact that they're all fairly outspoken, and that's kind of it's kind of brought them to notoriety, and it's also kind of got them cancelled in many circles. So this is something that definitely comes with a double-edged sword when it comes to the internet culture, politics, and social media. Um, yeah, the fact that you'll have a hard time finding good people at higher levels in society. Tate really goes in on his experience where that's concerned. From his humble beginnings, living in Luton in a council flat, to where he is now, worth hundreds of millions, being the most Google guy on the planet. Fuentes speaks about how he's been mislabeled far right, and Myron chimes in and mentions their friendship, leading to him having a completely different view of Fuentes, at least from what's portrayed in the media. Tate speaks on financial freedom and messages he's tried to install in his young followers. We're wrapping up. No, it's just a few more points, and we're going to get into this debate. He talks about the price he's paid in terms of his personal freedom, for being the most Google man on the planet, and for not being afraid to speak the truth to power. The YouTube portion, yes, when the YouTube portion of the show ends, leaving me at least with a much greater understanding, or better understanding, of all three of these influential figures, big internet personalities, and it gives me a clearer take on what they really think. And I'm sure you're going to have a similar reaction by the time we get to the end of this video. It's definitely not what we're told. Doesn't match what we're told in the media. Fuentes touched on some really relevant points relating to his movements and the young men he speaks to. He definitely highlighted the fact that he's a Catholic, and he's always encouraged to sort of preach the marriage thing and push them in the marriage direction, which he doesn't really do. He's got his own stance on that, which they go into a bit. And then going back to the main part of the debate, they speak quite a bit about problems in society and the black fatigue thing that is a thing now. We were hearing about a couple of months back. It was showing up a lot on social media, and a lot of people was covering it. Yeah, black fatigue being mistaken for racism, and how many of each of their comments are routinely misrepresented in the media. He talks about how women are used in the culture to influence our actions based on emotion, and how for the white culture this is having a devastating effect. Tate describes this as them simping their race into oblivion. Very harsh views. All in all, it's a hugely enlightening debate on many levels, and I'll urge you to watch the full YouTube part of the live stream in its entirety. As I said, links in the description, and if you have anything to say about this video and my summary, please do so in the comment section and let me know your thoughts. I'll be very happy to hear that and respond to you. Again, shout out to everybody on Facebook, those here on YouTube watching this particular live, and everyone on Twitch. So let's get into it. There's a few gremlins in the works on Myron's end. He's hosting the stream, and I know exactly what he's dealing with there. He sorts that out quite quickly. Look, I do all the tech production stuff here at CornerSpeak, so when things start going a little off, yeah, I know exactly what it's like sorting it out. but he's very experienced, knows what he's doing, and he'll sort that volume issue out momentarily.
I had to get some things going on in the background, make sure I wouldn't lag. But welcome, man. Andrew, Nick, you guys got me?
Yes. You get when you go live.
We're here.
He's fixed it.
Welcome, man.
He hasn't fixed his mic yet, though.
I guess I'll, bro, people have been asking for this for a very long time, literally years. And I know that we got something else cooking up for the guys, you know.
It wasn't me, and he's brown, so work it out. No, he's done a fantastic job with all the tech and stuff. I think this is going to be an interesting conversation. We're going to agree on a lot of things, but hopefully we can find some points of contention, because you know what? I think Nick has done a pretty good job of debating pretty much everyone, as have I. So it's been a while since we've had a sparring match where we might actually get hit with something that makes us think. So it's going to be very interesting. Very interesting. So we'll have to find those points of contention, and perhaps
love a thought-provoking debate.
We're going to end up agreeing with mainly everything, but I feel like there's a few small points we can knuckle down on.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'll turn it over.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, I've been a fan, Andrew, for a long time. We've talked before. We talked on the election stream, and we've done some other things. So I do think there's a lot of agreement. And, you know, I saw your tweet the other day, and, you know, I think the Groypers took it as...
See, I love the realness of the live stream environment. Anything can happen. Everything happens on the fly in real time. And there's a few gremlins in the works there, which they clear up further down the stream. Nothing to spoil the content.
Certain way, I took it a certain way, but the fundamental point, I think we're in agreement. So I think that probably by the end of it, we're going to be on the same side on this. So, but yeah, we'll throw some stuff in there just to make it fun. We got to make it fun. So maybe we'll find something to disagree about.
Yeah, I mean, my basic philosophy on it all, and I guess we can talk about it. And I feel, you know, I try and stay very much in my lane. People think of me as unhinged, and I like to argue that I'm actually the absolute opposite. And the Groyper movement's not my movement. It's yours. You're on a generational run. You're doing fantastic work. The internet is yours.
There's a lot that they're talking about that for me is the first. Fuentes, I know minimal about. A lot of how he's presented in the media, at least. The Groyper movement, never heard of it. So this has been a very informative live stream on many levels.
Twitter is yours. That can't be debated. And you should be very proud of yourself for that. When I said what I said, and if I read it here verbatim, I said the Groypers speak like a conquered people. The point I was making is that I feel, and this isn't even necessarily your fault, because in all movements, there's going to be varying degrees of extremity and extremism inside of it. But what often happens is, especially with me, I will say something often about women or white people reproducing, something along those lines. And the Groypers will jump in to call me a nigger and say that I work for the Jews, as opposed to understand the point I'm trying to make. When I say that, you know, it doesn't matter what laws we pass, it doesn't matter what legislation goes through the Congress, if white people don't have babies, you're soon to be replaced. The answer I get is, but the Jews made the white women not listen to us. And my answer to it is, well, now you sound like a conquered class. You sound like a conquered people. If the Jews are really trying so hard to subvert you from having children, then the correct answer is to have as many children as possible. The correct answer to my tweet is, they tried to stop me from having a bunch of white kids, but I did have a bunch of white kids. Look what I've achieved, irregardless of their attempts to subvert me, because I cannot be controlled. And there's a big difference between noticing a problem and using a problem as a cure-all excuse for your own.
Be your own person. Yep. Be on top of the problem, not underneath it.
Personal circumstances. And I spoke in absolutes because I often do. And I said, no Jew stops you going to the gym, which is a massive oversimplification. But the point I was making was, there's a lot. Have I gone?
No, you're here. You're here. Just turn your camera on.
Realness
Hit
of
the
live
thing.
streaming.
Camera's on.
Hold on. Let me, because it was lagging. That's why I was, okay, there you go.
Got some lag issues, I think.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but yeah. Okay, you're back on.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So, and Nick, I don't know if you could like turn your camera off, then turn it back on. I think that might fix the lag. But go ahead, Andrew.
Okay.
They can still hear you guys though. Fine. I think that fixed it. It's less laggy.
Okay.
Well, yeah, the point I was making is that, we have to make a very important distinction here. And if we're going to notice there's a problem with influence of the American government, which I've never disagreed with, which in fact I have spoken up for and agreed with you on basically everything and promoted all of your clips saying exactly that. There is a large distinction between noticing a problem and highlighting it and combating against it and using it as an excuse to fail in life. And I feel like some of the groypers, not all, some sound a bit like the blacks talking about the system. And I know plenty of those. And that's the point I was trying to make, that nobody can stop you winning if you want to win. That's the point I was making. I don't have a large problem with the movement on.
I'll add something to that. No one can stop you from winning if you want to win. Now, they can't determine what your path is going to look like or what the challenges will involve, but they cannot control that motivation. Well said from Mr. Tate.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I don't think it's the groypers, though. I think there does need to be a distinction made between what we would call colloquially on the right wing, we call them the Wignats. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before, but we call them Wignats. It stands for Wigger nationalist. Wigger meaning, and the reason we call them Wiggers as opposed to groypers or something else is because you're right. I would say that what is typified by black people is this sort of victim mentality that says, oh, is it because I'm black? Oh, you only have a problem with me because I'm black. Oh, keeping the black man down, all this kind of stuff. The reason we call them Wigger nationalists is because they have kind of adopted the worst aspects of black identity politics, which is to say, oh, you have a problem with me because I'm white? Oh, they're keeping the white man down. Oh, well, they'll just call us racist. Well, they'll just call us Nazis. And my attitude towards the problem is always, they can't stop us. If you go like I did and tell the truth directly and articulately, and you don't let them suppress you, at the end of the day, they really can't stop you. I think I'm living proof of that. And I encourage all my followers, don't make excuses. Don't go around and say, oh, it's...
See, smartness and positive, logical thinking, it's not determined by anyone's race or color. That's some technical issues on their side, which Myron will get on top of very rapidly, I'm sure, just to help the process along. I'll fast forward it a bit. Let me try something else.
That, and I'm with you 100%. I just would say I'm sure there's some groypers that are saying something like that. I would call that Wignat. This like chest beating. Oh, it's because I'm white. They're keeping the white man down. They are keeping the white man down, but we have to be worthy of our ancestors as white men and say, we don't need permission. We don't need to ask for permission. We're not going to let them get in our way. They're going to do bullshit to us, but we have to find a way to overcome. I guess where I would diverge slightly, because I hear this all the time, and directionally, I suppose I agree. But, when you talk about the birth rates, you're 100% right that the birth rates are a problem. The white people are not having kids. And if the white people don't have kids, it's over. We're going to be replaced. Yep. And I hear people say this to me all the time. They say, you need to have kids. And I plan on doing that. I plan on getting married and having kids at some point. I guess where I would depart, even from my fellow white people who say this, is that there is something structural happening where I don't believe the answer is that we're going to tell ourselves we all need to start having kids. Because how many people are even political? How many people are aware of the white genocide? How many people are going to have kids as a response to this problem? It's a very, very tiny number. And it's not to say that we shouldn't contribute to the solution, but it is to say that we fundamentally must engage in politics. It's sort of like chess. You know, all the pawns could simultaneously wake up one day and say, we need to have more white babies, we need to have kids. I think that's highly unlikely. We need to strike at the king. We need a regime. And I don't just mean like voting. I mean, we need to become resourceful, influential, rich, run media, be entrepreneurs, you know, pay politicians to run for office. And we need to use politics to change society. Because when you look at the strategy of like the Jews as an example, they're 2% of the population, but they have this extraordinary influence. That's because they go for the locus of power. They're in LA, they're in New York City, they're in DC. These are the most powerful cities in the world. They're in San Francisco, they're in El Segundo. They're striking at the locus of power.
So I don't want to disturb the flow and sort of jump around to certain portions of the debate as I originally thought I was going to do. I'm just going to let it run for a certain length and then we'll wrap up, and then you can go and watch the full length if you want to. I've highlighted a lot of the themes they delve into along the way, so it sets you up for some of what you're going to find in the fuller version of this brilliant debate.
And from the locus of power proceeds the cultural standards, proceeds these dominant narratives in the education system from academia. And so I'm really a believer, not in as much saying, oh, white people in general need to have more kids. Certainly that's a good thing. But it's more like I want the most brilliant elite human capital, the smartest, richest, best white people to become as powerful as possible, take over the institutions, and from the institutions promulgate a message of fertility, racial solidarity, national solidarity, and national consciousness.
The fact that we're living in a tribal world, whether you're on the blue pill side or you've been red pilled and you kind of see things without those rose tinted glasses, when you hear someone talking like this and, you know, take away the camera if you're just listening to sound alone, you kind of have a reference of what tribe he's representing. It shows you what's going on in the different quarters. And, you know, if our people or our side or our tribe or wherever you place yourself aren't thinking like that, it's definitely something that needs to be reflected on and rehashed. And let's face it, in the UK at least, where it used to be a what's the word for it, when it's based on, it was a class-based system, you know, top, middle class, lower class, and you know, things were very different to how they are now. I remember that term I used in yesterday's live, the great unwashed, is how the aristocracy used to refer to the lower classes, at least in the, you know, the monarchical eras, when the whole of Europe was run by monarchies, which they referred to later, and they started to fight each other. So even within one tribe, you're never going to have total peace, but who's thinking smartly, strategically, and who's not, that's definitely going to have a different outcome.
That's kind of where I'm at. And I don't think you'd even disagree, but it's just kind of like going a little step further on that.
No, I agree with you, actually, completely. And culture is the driving force behind all things. You know, I often comment on white people, black people. I'm in a unique position because I am a race mixed individual, which pisses off a large percentage of the internet. But this is how I was born, and that's how it goes. And there's not much I can do about it. But I would argue, besides yourself, there's probably no one else with a platform as large as mine who speaks up for white people ever. And one of the problems with extreme right-wing white people is we have this infinitely divisible, constantly searching for more and more based, to the point where no matter how much you do for them or try to help them, you're going to eventually not be based enough for them. And this is seen amongst white people in general. If we removed all the black people from Western civilization today, within 30 years, the Germans would be fighting the Italians again. I mean, that's what happened only 30 or 40 years ago. The Irish and English were blowing each other up. And now Ireland and England's both full of asylum seekers from the boats. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. So this infinitely divisible, this constant search for the more and more based version I actually think in some ways subverts the whole movement. The movement you've launched is so fantastic. The cultural effect you've had is also fantastic. But the biggest threat to the movement is not going to be external. It's going to be internal. And there is a percentage of people, no matter what I say, in defense of you, in defense of white people, in defense of Western civilization, come along and say, because my dad is black, who was a chess genius, by the way, is the only reason I'm even smart, that I'm a piece of shit and I need to be kicked out or I need to die or whatever. And I don't care because truthfully, I think it's hilarious. But when you have these cartoon anon accounts constantly going to a deeper and deeper level of everyone's a Jew, everything is this, everything is that, and they can't even get along with somebody who is clearly on their side in the larger fight, this is how you're going to end up losing the fight in the long run. And I think that's where some of the problem comes from, which again is not even your fault, but that's the problem with that movement on as a whole. And I'm going to say one thing from a personal perspective. I do feel like there is a degree of ungratefulness. Once again, this is not your fault, but there's an ungratefulness amongst people and an ungratefulness amongst the internet. I remind the internet on October 8th, against all legal advice, I told Piers Morgan it was a genocide. I stuck up and was anti-Israel on Piers Morgan on October 8th, before it was cool on the internet, very much like you. Now everybody does it. You did it before it was cool. I did it before I was cool. Anti-Semitism is a crime in Europe. They put me back on house arrest. I was locked in my house for 11 months because of what I said on a podcast. And now they turn up and tweet underneath that I'm a Jew. And I just think if that's how we're going to operate as a movement, we're only ever going to be a laughing stock to our enemies. And I agree with you about the locus of power. You're completely correct. And I think it's a multifaceted attack. But we have to be very careful here, because if I owned a farm and all the sheep worked out that I had a slaughterhouse, and all they did all day was say, that's a slaughterhouse, he's got a slaughterhouse, but they still walked into it, I wouldn't really care. There has to be a point where you don't obey what I want you to do. If they're trying to stop you from reproducing, then you must reproduce. If they're trying to beat you down so you don't make money because of Ursula, you need to make money. If they don't want you to be brave, you need to be brave. You need to look at their exact playbook, and instead of...
Sorry to jump in at this point. It brings my mind back to something I've heard discussed on a lot of podcasts where they're talking about the black community, and particularly in America and the UK, and the influence of political persuasion, you could say, where the reproduction rates has slowed extremely in the black community, being at 13 around about percentage of the population, and it has kind of remained the same. And some other groups like Latin Americans, they're growing exponentially, I think is the word, or at a much faster rate. And it has a lot to do with the social engineering, where in the black community there's more of an encouragement, and they say this is done, well, looking at stats, by putting the focus on the female effect, the females within the culture, within the community, and it's reduced the reproduction rate in the black community is very stunted, I think is a good word to use. So I think he's touching on those areas there to a degree.
Tweeting at people, instead of accusing every single person who doesn't have an anon cartoon account of being a Jew, you need to do the absolute opposite of what they want you to do. And I believe that's how we win. That's how your movement and you become president of the United States. I think that's better for you and the movement as a whole. So when I made that tweet, that Groypers speak like a defeated people, that's because I'll say something, and I speak in absolutes. I absolutely do, and I think trolling is hilarious. And I make it clear that, a white man, I say white man can't get a kid out of a woman unless he buys her 2 houses and 3 cars and a nanny. Ha, ha, ha. The Somalian can get 11 kids out of Fatima without a job. And I make a joke of it. All the replies is, well, now you're a Jew.
Much is said in jest, they say.
You're a race-mixing Jew, you work for the Jews. And I just think that is counterproductive to the good fight and counterproductive to your movement. That's my actual view.
At the same time, though, you got to recognize that if you're going to rage bait, you can't really be mad when people get mad. You know what I mean?
I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. I mean, I literally, I'm real nigger Tate. I call myself a nigger all day long. I think it's funnier than it is. I love trolling. I'm all for it. I'm just saying that if we're going to try and have a serious political movement here, then calling every single person a Jew because of some tedious or tenuous link, I think is disingenuous. I think that, and again, this is just my personal view, and I don't know enough. Since I got released from house arrest after 3 years in my house in February, I haven't been online that much. And I noticed you said I didn't weigh in on the Candace Tucker thing. I'm not versed enough to truly weigh in. I haven't seen every video. I haven't seen all of it. I haven't seen the back and forth. I've been with my children living my life. However, I would argue that Tucker has red-pilled a lot of people who would never watch your show about very important things that are happening in the American government that you'd agree with. I would say the same for Candace. I think of them on the good side of the fight. And perhaps this is going to get me in trouble. I think of them as good people trying to do the best thing they can, which is tell their version of the truth. And they're by and large on our side. And I think this infinite, divisible, constant infighting, constant looking for who's the most base, constantly saying, well, he's done 99 things right, but this one thing makes him a Jew. I just think it's holding us back by and large. That's my personal view, but it's not my movement. So I'm just saying what I see it as from the outside.
Well, and, you know, maybe that's where the disagreement lies, because I talked with Alex Jones about this yesterday. We didn't even plan on talking about it, but he brought it up. Obviously, I'm in this big feud with both Candace and Tucker Carlson right now, and I see it being characterized on Twitter by some people as infighting. And I would agree with you. I would tend to agree with you that if I were an outside observer, I would look at Candace and Tucker and myself, and I would think we're all on the same side. We're all pushing in the same direction. Certainly, we're all criticizing Israel. We're all against the war in Iran and the rest of it. And that's what I would tend to think. And yet, when I went out and did Candace's show, instead of talking about what we had in common, she wanted to talk about all the things that we had apart.
Before we go any further, if you'll allow me, I'd just like to do the sponsors shout out for today, which is Elite Artists. They are our video sponsors. And if you have any kind of entertainment needs, you're putting on an event, or you manage a restaurant or bar, you want a solo pianist, a whole band, or any kind of live entertainment, they're the people to go to for your complete entertainment needs. Elite Artists, whole thing is done through an app. If you're set up, you can just search through the acts available, click, click, click. You've got a band racking up at your event. Or if you need a personal, bespoke touch, you can call them up, speak to them one-to-one, and they will design your event or refer the exact correct choice of band you need for your audience and personal entertainment needs. So Elite Artists, check them out, and their information will be right there in the description.
Solos, duos, trios, and bigger bands. Added to the roster by audition only. Search Elite Artists on the App Store or Google Play today. Backing tracks. Just real live music, where the music can never be questioned. Every artist on the Elite Artist roster is hand-picked, auditioned live by our team. We've heard them, we've seen them, we know they deliver. Today, our exceptional pianists bring atmosphere to every occasion. A Sunday brunch set, or a luxury hotel lounge. Elegant and timeless. Book your pianist today.
So there you have it. Elite Artists, they will do everything for you and make sure you're set up to have a brilliant event. Look them up. Back with the debate.
She in particular wanted to press me on if I really hated Jews and if I was really a racist. So that confounded me, because if I'm an outside objective observer, maybe without all the information, I would say, wait, aren't Candace Tucker and Nick on the same side? But being me, I went to do her show with my suit on, ready to talk about the Iran war, the neocons, all this kind of stuff. And she's pressing me, why do you hate Dave Smith? Is it because he's Jewish? Do you hate Jews for being Jewish? Are you a racist? Is that why you're against race mixing? And so I finished the interview, and not to relitigate the whole thing, but this is just a summary of it.
I just have to say, these debates are valuable the amount of information you get to extract and get to see some of these big online personalities, huge social media figures, get to see them in a more balanced and neutral light, depending on who they're paired up with. And this is an amazingly chemistry-wise choice of characters, and they kind of balance out each other in terms of getting, you know, a more reasonable version of the person, so you get a better idea, sense of who they actually are. Because social media, legacy media, the way anyone is portrayed, particularly when you reach the status of celebrity or public figure, it's always skewed or exaggerated or caricatured. So I just think this particular debate, I mean, Myron I'm familiar with, Tate to a degree, Fuentes less so, and it really has got me to see him in a more even-keeled way. Brilliant show.
I finish the thing and I get on my show and I say, it's weird she's putting it behind a paywall. I said, and also I'm unhappy with what we talked about. I thought this was an olive branch. Clearly it was some kind of like a lecture. I thought she was having me out to maybe extend an olive branch and connect.
I'll just throw it out there as well. This content creation, social media, influencing world, it's often paid to be quite, you could say, glamorous. And yes, there's an aspect to showbiz and entertainment to it. When you see the dynamics of the back end, you know, there's a certain element of graft and having a strong personality, having a well thought out message, and there's substance to it. So hearing him tell his story here is very enlightening.
And instead, I got a wagging finger from a woman in my face, which I don't really care for. And then, as if to make matters better, she goes with Tucker Carlson. And Tucker, who, you know, me and him have a bit of a history, he calls me a basement-dwelling, weird gay kid. He says I'm a CIA agent. He unloads this personal attack on me. And so, yeah, I would not characterize that as infighting. I would say, to me, that looks like a coordinated attack on me, and it's not purity spiraling. It is coming from them in the other direction, saying that I'm too extreme. In fact, that's literally what Tucker said. Tucker said that I am a crazy anti-Semite who is trying to make them look bad by being too ideologically pure. So, you know, maybe you've been away for a long time, you don't know what's going on, but it wasn't me coming at them for being soft. No, they were coming at me for being too extreme. And that's where I have to defend myself and say, wait a second, you're calling me a CIA agent? Your fucking dad was in the CIA. I said this to Tucker on this big show. A week later, Elon Musk is echoing what Tucker Carlson said, calling me a Fed. And it's in the context of this Matrix attack. I don't know what else you call that. That then you came on Twitter and said the thing about the Groypers. I think that's why they took it a certain way, because what it looked like was coordination. I don't know if you're in on that or not. I don't believe you were, but certainly something weird is going on. And it all coincided with what you said, which is I'm on this generational run. I have broken containment. I'm going mainstream. Now, I would like to do a show with Tucker and talk about our similarities and differences. I would have liked to do that with Candace.
It's funny how revealing this debate has turned out to be. I mean, I like Tucker, I like Candice, and hearing somebody else's perspective on their interaction with them, it tells you a lot.
Owens, but it seems like they're trying to keep me out. They're trying to push me aside. As far as the movement's concerned, I'd like to be on the same page with them, but, you know, they don't feel that way about me. So, you know, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that whole situation?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. And like I said, I'm not fully versed on all of it. I guess there's two ways I can answer that question. At a certain point, and of course, you're a full-grown man, you make your own decisions. I'll be very clear that I like Candace. She's always been very respectful to me. I think she's fantastic at her job. I actually think she's amazing at what she does. I have nothing bad to say about her. I think that when people were saying the Bridget series was irrelevant, I think that's disingenuous. I think it's actually very relevant to find out if the most prominent country in the European Union is being run by a pedophile and his dad. I also think it's hilarious that she trolled Macron into having a meltdown. I think that trolling's funny, and I think it's funny. I don't know how anyone doesn't find that funny that legal letters are flying around the world. I mean, you're saying they attacked you. I respect it. There's two ways to answer that question. The first thing you can do, and you can make your own decision as a full-grown man, is it about you and your own personal feelings, which it's allowed to be, by the way, or is it about the movement by and large as a whole? Because I've sat down with people who have come out for me guns blazing, but I believe they were 65% on the same.
That's a really good point, as a matter of fact, that when these figures get to the place where they're the head of a large movement, it's a different responsibility than just holding up your end as a one single person. Very good point.
Side as me, and I defended myself, and I thought, you know what, they're doing more harm than good. And instead of arguing about the color of the wallpaper inside the castle, let's defeat the orcs at the gate first, and then we can start arguing about how we're going to decorate this room. But that's a decision that you can make personally. I'm not saying what they did is right, and I'm not saying what you did is wrong.
It's wrong.
That's a decision that you can make. I understand that my timing now with that context would be suspect. I understand that absolutely. But I have nothing against Candace and Tucker, and the whole CIA agent dad thing, I'd actually like to address that as well. One of the reasons why that holds no weight with me is my father was in the intelligence services. And now there's a whole bunch of people spamming my account.
He's referring to Tucker Carlson. And actually, up until this debate, I had no idea that there was something simmering behind the scenes on or any kind of beef brewing on social media about Tucker Carlson's dad being a former CIA worker or anything like that, and what the relevance would be to who Tucker Carlson is today.
Saying that I'm a Jewish asset because my father was CIA, but I've been very honest and open about the fact that he was a translator and he spoke 3 languages. And I was also open about the fact that he was discharged without a pension for not following orders, ended up living in his car being a traveling chess player. Wow. And I had to grow up in a homeless hostel in Luton, England, fighting Kosovans at the age of 11. So if there's some big intel agency op going on, I never got any money from it. And our family grew up destitute. And I grew up in the worst area in England. And now they're throwing me in jail at random.
Well, fun fact, I can relate to him on that point. We also
you could spew whatever it is
you living in a council flat and well,
random. So for anyone to believe that I'm some kind of
the head of the household, we didn't have to remain there indefinitely, but I can definitely relate to him on that score.
Intelligence opera fed is disingenuous. And another thing, and I want to make this clear, when I talk with you about issues, I'm very honest and open about the fact that you have swaths of knowledge I don't have. I don't want to get pulled into muddy waters where I'm in a situation and we're discussing something I know nothing about. You can start talking about the financing of a particular senator, and I don't know. So I kind of operate on feels, you know? Do I think you're a Fed? Truthfully, in my heart, no. Do I think Candace and Tucker are Feds? In my heart, no. When someone says, Tucker's a Fed, his dad was in the CIA, I say, my dad was in the CIA, and we were fucking broke. And he got discharged, and he died destitute with $15 in his pocket. So I don't buy any of that. What I do think is perhaps there's some ego involved, perhaps we're at a pivotal moment in culture. Perhaps maybe there is a degree of them trying to assert dominance over you or trying to show that, you know, they're not scared of your influence. That's all possible and all very real. I can only answer what I would have done in your situation, which was what I said earlier. I would have sat down with Candace, I would have defended myself and say, you know what, by and large, I think she does fantastic work. By and large, I agree with her. So I don't see the point in going to war with her. However, my God, that's your decision to make. And I do also understand that going to war with people is entertaining. And we are in the entertainment business. That's another thing to consider. It's pretty funny to go to war with people and start swinging. But we have to sit down and be professionals here. And as professionals, we have to sit and say, okay, are we really trying to win? Because if there's things you've said I could get upset about, but I don't actually give a shit. You can sit here right now and call me a nigger and say I'm a Jew. And I'd be like, you know what? I like you anyway. I'm going to like you whether you like it or not. I'm going to say, I like what Nick says. I think what he's doing is important. I don't give a fuck what he says about me. I like what he does. And I think that that's actually a degree of maturity that the left have that we don't have, because they hate us so much. They're so unified and binded by their hate for us that they'll never infight over small issues. They're too busy trying to kill us And I think unless we can manage to get our heads around doing something similar, we're always going to end up, every time we get any power, just infighting and falling to pieces.
Well, I would say that as far as you three are concerned, I do believe you're all different. I think that you are different than Tucker, and I think that Tucker is different from Candace. And the reason I knew that is because when Candace went on with Tucker, Tucker said, oh, you know, this kid, he's saying my dad is in the CIA. And Candace said, yeah, and he said that I'm Russian intelligence. And Tucker said, yeah, but that's more likely than my dad being in the CIA or me being in the CIA. So in that moment, I was like, okay, so wait a second. These two are not on the same page. And I don't think you're on the same page with them even necessarily on this whole thing. And I guess what I would say about their attack is, in particular, Tucker's attack was to discredit me. And, you know, I don't want to drag you into a conversation that you don't know all the information about, because I don't think that's fair. But suffice to say, the particular thrust of his attack was to say that I'm a federal operative, was to say that I'm a federal agent. And you say that the question is, how do I handle that? Do I punch back really hard? Do I sort of take my lumps, so to speak? I would say that's a very pernicious and specific charge to make, which is supposed to say, and it was almost artful the way that he did it. He said, Nick says a lot of the right things, but you shouldn't listen to him because he's not who he says he is. And that sort of says,
backhanded compliments,
to me, that they are trying to block me from having influence. They're trying to destroy my reputation so that people don't listen. And in my show against Tucker, I sort of contrasted our two positions. If it's about the movement, for me, my movement says we're about American sovereignty. We want to break free from Israel. We want to break free from Jewish oligarchs. It's identitarian. America has a white character. It has a European character. It's racial. That has a lot to do with it. We need to shut down immigration. We need to get rid of this oligarchic syndicate that's running our country. And I would question, does Tucker conform to that? Because repeatedly he insists, I have never talked about racial replacement migration. He insists, I'm not an enemy of Israel. I love Israel. I love going to Israel. Now, you know, what movement is he a part of? He's part of the movement where you work for Fox News for 20 years. And then when the whole world gets red-pilled, now you're going to talk about Israel a little bit. Is the movement where your dad's in the CIA? Is the movement where you call up Trump and tell him to do a COVID lockdown? Is the movement where you say you hate Trump and you're ready to see him go away because you can't stand him? I don't know who Tucker is. I know who I am. And I would say that when push comes to shove, I have a much better case to make that I'm a credible voice than he does. I would make the case that my movement, to the extent that it's different, is much more consistent with what's right and where the people are at. If he wants to make it me versus him, be my guest. I don't think he's going to like where that goes on a long enough timeline. So that's why.
I mean, just on an age basis, they're covering two different demographics. Although subject matter wise, I guess that brings them onto an even playing field. And thus the beef thrives to a degree.
Said to Alex Jones yesterday, I said, I would love to privately or publicly talk to Tucker. If he thinks I'm a fed, if he cares about the movement, then, you know, look, I'm not going away anytime soon. He needs to listen and take me seriously, obviously, because his attack on me backfired. I think he needs to put up or shut up. Have me on the show and debate the differences, make the case I'm a fed, or get with the fucking program. But that's kind of where I'm at with him. So I'm with you. I do have a consciousness of the movement, and I think that maybe Tucker plays a role in this movement, and maybe Candace plays a role, but I think they need to have a team player mentality. I can't be expected to have all the magnanimity in the world and all the patience and tolerate the kind of nonsense they're throwing my way. That's kind of my position, because I like you a lot, and I think, you know, when you and I had our disagreement on Twitter, you said, fuck it, let's get on a stream. I love that. I think that's honest. I think, you know, like you said, we don't agree on everything. And I've taken issue with things you've said and vice versa. But we can kind of talk about where we align. And first of all, we can talk. Yeah. I think we should expect the same thing from them as well. And in particular, Tucker. So that's sort of where I'm at, because I sort of see what you're saying, but I got to stick up for myself a little bit in this case.
Totally get it. And that's my point about the tweet I made. And I totally understand how the timing was suspect. But even recently, even today, one more thing I want to say when it comes to your movement as a whole. And once again, I need to stay in my lane because it's not my movement. It's yours and you've built it. And most importantly, you've suffered for it. It wasn't handed to you. You suffered to build what you've built, which is why it's so strong and so powerful. Same as my movement, which, you know, I would say it's moved over now. I did.
There is no free lunch.
My job. And I would argue that we moved into a new era where we have new concerns. When I was saying the things I was saying at the time, it was groundbreaking, and now everybody says them. And there's always going to be a part of you, which is a bit like, okay, so when it was dangerous to say these things, I did it. And now it's not dangerous. Everyone says it. And it pisses you off a little bit. So I also understand perhaps when you just mentioned, you said there that Tucker's now saying it when everyone else is saying it. There's going to be a bit of personal, like, hey, I got debanked. I couldn't fly. I suffered for this. Like, I went to jail for what I said, and now everyone tweets it all day long and calls me a fed. Part of you is going to be like, well, that's ungrateful of the masses, isn't it? Because I was the one who was suffering to even say this stuff in the first place, which is a real important point. So I understand exactly where you're coming from. I totally get it. And one more thing with the whole Groyper movement as a whole, and I just want to say these things, and I'm saying them from an outside perspective. I am a friend of your movement. I consider myself a friend of yours. I believe in what you guys are doing. You're fucking hilarious. I'm not an enemy in any regard. But I do think that it's very difficult. We have to draw a line somewhere, and we have to have some degree of, well, what are the parameters then? Okay, Tucker did attack Nick, perhaps, or Candace attacked Nick, perhaps, fine. But if they are exposing X, Y, Z, is that worthwhile? And also, we have to come along and say, sometimes these tedious links can be exaggerated upon. Only a few hours ago, I retweeted Milo, and you wrote a tweet underneath it saying that this is very suspicious. This was a few hours ago. And I retweeted Milo because Milo defended me, saying that all these court cases against me, nobody can seem to put me in jail. Nobody has any proof. I didn't think, Milo and Nick, I don't know the story of you two, to be honest. I now know you don't like each other. I don't know why. And with all due respect, I don't care. He defended me, so I retweeted it. I also retweeted a 3-person account who defended me with 3 followers. He could be a pedo. I don't fucking know. I just retweeted it. So sometimes there's too much noticing, and there's too many strings drawn, and there's too much, people are looking for insult where it doesn't really exist. And I think that's one of the other things, separate to Candace and Tucker, because that was very deliberate against you, as you've just explained. One of the other things that I catch flack for from your movement is I breathe in the wrong direction, and perhaps a Jew was pointing that way when he breathed in 1941. And before you know it, I've got these spurgs spamming all over Twitter. And the reason that that's a bad thing is not because I give a shit. It's because it genuinely delegitimizes what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you're legit. I think that, as far as the Milo thing is concerned, the only reason I even mentioned it is because Candace did her show with me. She did her show with Tucker, and then she does a show with Milo. Elon Musk replies to Milo calling me a fed. Then you come in and kind of, you didn't really pick a side, but you sort of said the Brigitte Macron thing's legit, and you said the Groypers talk too much about the Jews, or that they blame the Jews or something. And then you retweeted Milo. It looked like it was coordinated. I hope you understand that. And totally. I think that people need to scrutinize these things because, as you know, and you're brilliant on politics. I consider you a friend too, and I consider what you have built to be one of the most positive things that's happened in the 2020s. And I even come down on your side when you're arguing with Catholics like Matt Walsh, because honestly, a lot of the Catholic, white right, they're pussies when it comes to women. And a lot of the trad stuff is 100% steered by women. So, I mean, your thing on patriarchy, in my opinion, is indispensable. It's literally indispensable. And it's like, it's actually a good thing that we're in the Tate generation of young kids that are saying, what color is your Bugatti and all. I think it's actually a really good thing. But with that being said, as far as these connections are concerned, I think transparency is the solution. Yeah. You coming on this and saying, hey, I just retweeted him just because. Okay, valid, legitimate. I hear you. But in a lot of these cases, typically where there's smoke, there's fire. And I like to draw these connections because this is how politics operates. You do get these networks that come together. There are networks of patronage. There are networks of money. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of people came to me privately and said, I'm on your side. I agree with you, but I can't speak out against Tucker because he's done things for me, because he's a friend of mine. And I've heard that from a lot of people. I'm not going to name names. Some of them said it publicly. Glenn Greenwald, Ian Carroll. They said a lot of nice things about me. Dave Smith, too. But they also said, you know, I don't even really want to weigh in because I like Tucker. Now, you know, in our political battle, we actually have to be willing to criticize people. We have to be willing to scrutinize those kinds of things. Yeah. And someone like Tucker, you know, he's got some explaining to do. He said he didn't know his dad was in the CIA. He lied. He did know that. Now, if we're coming for the Matrix, and insofar as the Matrix is the deep state, we're going to need an answer on that. I would like an answer on that, as well as some of these other things. And so that's where it's like, I agree with you. There is 100%, there can be a schizo tendency. And unfortunately, when you introduce concepts like Palantir, a limited hangout, when you introduce that to low IQ people, they'll start seeing it everywhere. You know, and unfortunately, it is true. I've seen it. People like trip on their shoelace and say this was a Palantir limited hangout. You know, It does happen. But in many cases, we actually do need transparency on some of these connections, because it's not lost on me that, you know, like Tucker Carlson, one of his critiques of me, he said that I am delegitimizing someone like J.D. Vance. And I said, well, wait a second. You know, Tucker had J.D. Vance on his show 46 times. Tucker made a personal appeal to Trump to choose Vance as his nominee. Now, Candace does not seem to be gung-ho about Vance. So there might be some, like I said, I think Candace is different than Tucker, and they're both different than you. But when Tucker came at me with that, I said, wait a second. He's calling me CIA. His dad is CIA. His friend Joe Kent is CIA. His buddy J.D. Vance works for Peter Thiel, who's a CIA contractor. That's a lot of CIA. That's a ton of CIA going on. And he lied about what he knew about the CIA. That's where I say, okay, sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. So, you know, I 100% agree. There can be a tendency to get a little schizo, or maybe there's like a low IQ version of what we talk about. But I don't think I'm wrong about a lot of these connections. And, you know, when you reposted Milo, and, you know, maybe you'll admit it could have come across as a bad look. And that's why it's helpful when you said, that's how I know you're legit. A lot of people behind the scenes tell me, you got to press Tate. Tate's the enemy. Remind him his dad was in the CIA. What I respect about you is you talk to me. I have your number. I talk to you. I've been on streams with you. You're transparent. You said your dad is in the CIA. We didn't have to dig that out of anywhere. And to me, that's the difference. Is there that transparency? If you're transparent, you know, we can ask the question, it gets answered, and we could say, okay, that's good enough. But if people hide or lie or they're not forthcoming, that's where there's a little scrutiny. So that's where I'm at on that. I do think it's important to look at some of those things.
No, it makes perfect sense. And just once again, from the very outside perspective, and I have to make it.
Now, this bit's really good. I do believe he's going to clarify what went on with the Milo tweet, and very crucial.
Clear that I'm not as versed on all of these topics as a lot of the people who are watching this, but I've barely been online. I pop up online. I see there's this feud going on. The first thing I felt was a degree of sadness, to be honest. I mean, that's what I felt. And it was the same with Elon and Trump. I disagreed with Elon about H1B1. I think everybody did with a brain. Nobody wants that shit. It's a joke. But I think by and large, he's done fantastic things. I think that Twitter, if he never bought it, by now would be so fully locked down. I think he did help with the culture. I think he made some massive positive pushes in the correct direction. And maybe a lot of this is going to be personality driven. Perhaps this is just me from a personality perspective. But if somebody does something good, I try very hard to not forget what they've done. The internet is a very fast moving place. There's a lot of ungratefulness on the internet, because you can do something amazing on a Monday and everyone hates you on a Tuesday. Because it's fun to hate people, and it's interesting, and trolling is fun. And that's kind of how it works. But when Trump and Elon started arguing and there was the big division, I felt a degree of sadness. When I saw that Tucker, Candace, and you didn't get along, I really, perhaps I'm a sentimental old man, I felt like we'd all be better if we were to a degree on the same team. And we're never all going to agree on everything. I like what you said about the transparency point. That's fantastic. Me, from a personality perspective, if there's orcs at my gate, I'm prepared to work with somebody who I disagree with on 99% of the problems besides let's kill the orcs. So I noticed as well, a lot of the Groypers are constantly retweeting and constantly hammering Tristan for supporting JD Vance. Well, JD Vance is the only American politician who talks about the fact that we don't have any freedom of speech in Europe. JD Vance was the only politician who talked about the fact that Romania, the country we're in, the country that locked us up, overthrew their own election. He's the only one who called it out. So perhaps at a deeper level, you know things I do not know, or there's some things about him I would not like, perhaps. But initially, the initial battle in Europe, we can't even talk. He's the only one sticking up for us. And it's kind of like this infinitely divisible problem, which is a problem we're going to have with the entire movement, especially if we're successful. The more successful we are, the more fragmented it's going to become. As I said, if we had a white-only nation, the Italians would fight the Spanish, would fight the Germans, and before you know it, the North and the South would hate each other, and you'd be a Texan, and you'd be from Chicago, and everyone would hate each other again, even though we're all the same skin color. That's how it was before. That's why Europe was at constant war. So this infinite divisible problem is a real one, and we kind of have to find a way, especially, and this is me speaking out of turn because it's your movement, it's not my movement. But for you, I would say you have to kind of try to find a way to give some hard parameters and allow people who are not as intelligent as you, not as smart as you, not as well versed as you, and most of your fans are not going to be. That's why you're the star, to sit and say, okay, where does someone fall? Are they on the good side or the bad side? Because perhaps they did this and this and this, but by and large, they've done X, Y, Z. I always thought, in my infinite ignorance, that Ian Carroll was a good guy. He exposed things, and I watched his videos, and I thought, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting. And then I saw his feed, and everyone was calling him a Jewish plant. And I'm like, what the fuck? Maybe I just don't know enough. Maybe I'm ignorant and dumb. But I was like, how the fuck is he a Jew? He's literally said the opposite the whole way through. So I do think this is some kind of issue which is going to be nearly impossible to solve because the internet's the internet, and this is how it works. And also, I will state this, even my movement, there are people in my movement who are retards, and they'll go to the gym and they'll hit their chest and they'll tell every woman to fuck off. And, you know, they'll walk around with a gun saying they're a G, and they're fucking retards, and they're part of my movement. And that's going to be part of every single movement. That's part of it. I just think we need to
never be a perfect world.
Try our very best if we want to make a serious political and genuine change. You're right. We have to draw connections. We have to notice patterns. That's what you've done fantastically. That's what you've built your brand on. And perhaps my transparency allows me to sit down and explain that my father was discharged dishonorably for not following orders and that we never even got a military pension and grew up destitute. You can all look that up online. Perhaps my transparency helps me, yes. But sometimes I see so much stuff being thrown around. I always like to think of things from the enemy's perspective. If I was them and I saw you fighting with Candace, fighting with Tucker, and then I retweet someone and then you say I'm part of them, and they're sitting there knowing none of us are part of them, they're laughing their fucking ass off. And I just think we have to be very conscious of that. That's the only point I'm making.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I just, you know, then it's got to be all in the family because they instigated with me. I would have been glad to join up with Tucker. And honestly, here's what I'll say on the stream. I still am. Because it's true that Tucker is getting torched by a lot of his erstwhile Jewish or pro-Israel allies. Yep. There's no question about that. And same with Candace Owens. Yep. Candace and Tucker, and to your point, you know, just to demonstrate, because I think I'm objective and I think I'm magnanimous, I think that Candace and Tucker, you're 1,000% correct. They have brought a lot of people closer to the truth. There is just no question. Candace with the women, Tucker with the normies. And, you know, Candace with the normie women, I suppose, and you as well. I mean, you know, but we're talking about them in this case, and you without a doubt as well. So I do believe there's room for cooperation. It's just, it's like we said before, though, if that's sort of my perspective, I'm sort of coming to Candace to join up, but she's telling me you're a racist anti-Semite, and I'd like to cooperate with Tucker, but he's calling me a Fed, and I'm this loser and all this. It's like, so I would extend the olive branch to someone like Tucker. And me, I have such a consciousness for the team. Me and Candace have a very vicious rivalry right now. For me, it is, and I say this, my right hand to God, it is not personality driven. It is not ego driven. I could forgive her tomorrow. I've called her a bitch like 100 times. And I know you probably don't love that, but I've called her a bitch a bunch of times. I could apologize for that tomorrow. And I could sit down and have dinner and be best friends tomorrow. The question is there that willingness on the other side to get on the same page? Is there that willingness to kind of open up the space for someone who is a little bit further to the right? I do believe that.
I get it. So I've got a question for the sake of our debate. So I would argue, and of course, once again, this is full of presuppositions. I'm just guessing here. I would argue that there's.
So we're going to be wrapping up shortly. I'm just letting it run on. You haven't heard much from Myron. He's pretty much the moderator, but he's going to say quite a bit in the latter half of this debate. I'm letting it run because there's so many nuggets and crucial bits of background info, knowledge, and information they bring into the fore. So just going to let it run for a bit more, and then we'll start wrapping up.
The degree of disingenuity when it comes to people saying that her Bridget series is not important or it's trash. And I think you made a clip on it. I didn't watch the whole clip, but you said something about how Macron is an enemy of Israel or something along these lines. And why is she going for Macron? I truthfully, and I'm saying this from the heart, and I've only watched 2 episodes of her series. I haven't even watched the whole thing. And I didn't even watch your whole clip. But I don't see how anyone can not think that's good journalism and not think it's hilarious. I really don't think it's genuine for people to sit and say that that series was a setup somehow and she's working for the Russians somehow and that she's somehow working for the Jews because she did that. And I think that it's people disliking her, so instantly tarnishing her work. And I think that it's very important for us as professionals to be able to sit down and say, even if my worst enemy, I can sit and say, I don't like that person, but that work was good. Like, I think Matt Walsh, by and large, is not even a bad person. I think he just has no impact on the culture at all. I don't think anybody cares what he says. But when I saw some of his clips when he was making fun of the trannies, it was funny. Like, you know, okay, cool. That's good work. Like, I don't care who makes the work if the work is good. And I noticed after your argument with her, everyone was saying that her Brigitte series was bullshit. I don't think it's unimportant, and I don't think it was bullshit. I think it was actually very informative, and I think it was quite an interesting story. And I think that if Macron is fucking his dad, we should know. Ooh. And I also think that it's fucking hilarious how triggered he is.
Allegedly.
And I would argue that normally you, if you didn't have a beef with Candace, would also be saying the same thing, that this is funny, and Macron's pissed, and this is all hilarious. Or do you genuinely, your emotions, your feelings for Candace aside, really think that that piece of work is somehow bad work to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's actually the opposite. I liked Candace last year, and I hated the Brigitte Macron thing. I just didn't say anything because I didn't want to mess with her thing. I'll give you a counterexample. She did an interview with Phil Turney, who's a survivor of the USS Liberty. I thought that was excellent. I thought that was brilliant. Got huge coverage, totally drove the conversation forward. I'm objective. I'm honest. I tell it like it is. I do have a major problem with Candace right now, but that was awesome. And unquestionably so. I'll tell you my issue with the Brigitte Macron thing. It's a couple of things. One, I think it's weird. I think it's weird that Candace is so hung up on the French president, because in America, we just don't really talk about Europe. We don't really care about Europe that much. It's just not something we're engaged in. So for her to have this laser-like focus on that, to me, it kind of gives me a weird feeling from the beginning. Then you delve into kind of the history there. And for a long time, there's been an effort to go after Macron from this crew. Like, I don't know if you know, but back in 2017, there was this huge effort to say that Macron was gay, and that was being pushed by Russian media. It was being pushed by Sputnik and Russia Today. They were quoting Julian Assange. They leaked all Macron's email 2 days before the election in 2017. So there's been, for like 8 years, this concerted campaign to attack Macron personally, call him gay, say he's married to his dad. So that's another thing, is like it comes back over and over again. Then you get into the person pushing this, the guy, Xavier Poussard. He wrote the book, Becoming Brigitte. This guy's crazy.
like the guy that originated the theory, it's very fringe in France. He believes in the QAnon stuff. He thinks he's working for Trump. He thinks he's working for Putin. The guy's nuts. And when you get down into the actual information, at the end of the day, their proof is that there's a photograph of the person they say Brigitte is as a child, and using this Chinese facial recognition, it says there's an 80% match to Brigitte Macron today. And I don't think that's super good journalism. I think the evidence is flimsy. And I would say maybe there's something going on there. Maybe Brigitte Macron is weird or something. But to me, the evidence is very flimsy. So that's my problem with it. And the reason that I even call it out, why not let it alone? The reason I call it out is because, one, if it's an angle from Russia or some other thing, then that needs to be called out by itself. But two, I think it's so kooky, it just makes us look bad. I think it's one of those things where maybe people watch the USS Liberty show, but then if you're talking about aliens and secret transgenders and the Frankists and, space isn't real, it's like then we just look like we're crazy. So that's the other thing. But it's actually in reverse of what you said. If I liked Candace, I would not talk about my problems with it at all if we had a working relationship. But since we're at odds, I'm more willing to criticize her. So it's totally the opposite.
Fair enough.
Well, perhaps this is just a personal preference thing, but I think it's extremely important if we find out that the leader of a European nation, especially the nation which just overthrew the election here, by the way, one of the most important economies on the planet, and Europe is by and large America's ally and will have to be against China for the coming decades. If there is an elite pedophile ring which is in charge of his country, especially if you want to tie this to Epstein and everything else, and the fact that Keir Starmer is gay and all these things, the fact that we have all these homosexuals in power, I think would largely affect the culture. And we just talked about how the culture is so important. I would argue that it doesn't make us look kooky for investigating that. Very much like you said, we need to, if there's smoke, there's fire. And, if there's the timing is weird, or there's a string here, or there's a link there. I think that she did a fantastic job on the series, and I think it's pretty important. And I'm just surprised from a personal level, you don't find it hilarious that Macron's having a breakdown. I just thought that you would find it funny like I did. When I saw the legal letters, me and Tristan were laughing our ass off. It's funny. The same as Keir Starmer talking about me all day. I think it's funny these people get triggered.
That's funny.
Maybe it's just me liking the underdog. Maybe it's just me liking that we have some degree of power to actually influence the emotions of these people who are suppressing us, especially in Europe, so heavily. So I was just surprised by your take on that. And my conclusion in my mind was, he's pretending that's not good work when it's clearly hilarious because he doesn't like Candace. And you've given your answer, which I respect. I was just highlighting why I thought that was weird, because I actually thought that was a fantastic series. And I think if it turns out she is right, I think that's very important. I would argue that's extremely important. And I mean, right now we have the problem with Keir Starmer in the UK. He got caught fucking Ukrainian rent boys. That we're not allowed to say that. I'm about to catch another charge for saying that right now. I'm trapped in Europe. And perhaps maybe you're saying America first, and as Americans, we don't care. I'm in Europe. They're the ones throwing me in jail. They're the ones fucking with my life. They're the ones who are constantly watching everything I say. They're the ones watching this stream right now, trying to raise charges on me. And the Western world, by and large, is the same thing. I think that you even said earlier at the beginning of this that America was founded on European white heritage. So we don't want to lose the ancient countries. We don't want to lose the original lands of the people we're trying to restore to glory. So I think she's doing fantastic work. And that's my personal view on it. I think she's doing fantastic work with it. And I was just surprised you disagreed on that point. That's all.
Yeah, well, and that's legitimate. I guess for me,
so we're coming to the end point now. There's about 50 plus minutes left, excuse me, on the YouTube side of the debate, and then they flip over to some other channels. So it's gonna just hear a little bit more, and then we'll start moving on out.
Your point about it's funny, like,
just want to take the time to throw a thank you out there to you for stopping by here at CornerSpeak. Those of you on FB, Facebook, those of you here at YouTube, and everybody at Twitch. The information's in the description if you want to watch the full stream. And I'd like to hear your point of view. Leave it in the comments, and we'll catch a little bit more of this brilliant debate.
That does resonate with me because I thought that way for a long time. I would look at something like that and say, oh, we're doing it for the lulz. We're doing it, because we're trolling Macron. We're trolling everybody. But what I have come to learn over the years is that a lot of the things that seem random or seem like they're based on hype, they're all coordinated. And that doesn't mean that everything.
That is true. That is absolutely true. And there are systems and there are groups and there are piles of money being thrown around. You're absolutely right about that. I want to make it clear. You're completely correct.
Yeah. So that's where and I'm not saying, and I said it on Bradley Martin, as far as Candace is concerned, I said everything I say about the Brigitte Macron thing is speculative. Is it a Russian operation? I said that is a theory. That's like a working postulate that I haven't really even researched, but just that's sort of where my gut says. And we just do need to be mindful. As I grow older, I see these kinds of memes, trends, and it's easy when you're 18 and you have no orientation of politics. You kind of like, when you're a kid, you don't know how this stuff works. And for me, I was a young edgelord. I was a young shit poster troll. And you'd see the bigger accounts in the group chats pushing a meme, a certain narrative, something. And you say, I like this poster. I like Gavin McInnes. I like this guy, that guy, whatever. What they're pushing is funny. And I'm just using him as an example of a big poster. Yeah. And you go, yeah, we're going to join in on this. And as I get older, I realize a lot of that stuff is backed by money. It's coordinated. It is like, it's a domain of warfare. It's information warfare. And that's why I'm just I scrutinize it a lot more and I'm very careful. I fully believe that Candace believes what she's saying. I actually don't doubt her sincerity. I just think that whole narrative, maybe someone gave it to her. It might be a possibility. And even to the extent that it exists in Russia, it's either kookery or it is being picked up by an intelligence agency for some reason, because it's very strange and conspicuous, the whole thing. So especially this this idea that the West is like satanic pedophile elite. I don't doubt that there's something like that going on when you look at like spirit cooking and the Podestas and Pizzagate. I also think that sometimes foreign intelligence leans into narratives like that, to sow discontent or dissonance inside of our society. And it's our job to discern those things. It doesn't mean that every narrative like that is fake. It doesn't mean, and not every narrative like that is true. It's up to us to discern. And so as far as the Brigitte thing is concerned, I think Candace is sincere. I don't find it very compelling. And I think at the minimum, it is being picked up by Russia on some level because Russia is adversaries with France. And as you know, the more you get into politics, the more you realize everything proceeds from intelligence and defense. Everything proceeds from the national security state.
Yep.
The energy needs, the technology, the media, information domain. These are all domains of warfare. We're in the age of complexity. And so if I can impress nothing else on my followers, it's that. It's all warfare. It's all ongoing, open, everyone against everyone warfare. Even
I heard somebody state once, they said that peace is a gap between wars. And I'm coming to believe in that perspective with what I see going on around the world.
In the information space.
No, you made some very important points, and I'll make a quick personal story. Even when I was accused of human trafficking and locked up and all this bullshit, the American right never really disliked me in any regard. They all defended me. Even Ben Shapiro said that Andrew is correct about the things he says, but he has some of the wrong solutions, but he's by and large correct about the problems with society. The whole American right supported me. When I first got out of jail, there was nobody on the American right who disliked me until October 8th, when I told Piers Morgan that Israel was conducting a genocide. And then the entire American right turned on me instantly, saying that I'm a degenerate because I have sex with more than one girl, and that I'm a terrible person, and I'm a pimp, and all these things. These were accounts that were defending me the day before, and that was organized inside of Telegram groups that I've had access to, and they were paid money to all instantly slander me and turn on me. So you're completely correct. You're also completely correct in saying this is being picked up by Russian intelligence. Yeah, it was. I was fighting in China when the George Floyd riots were going on. And before my fight, I was watching the Chinese news, and the Chinese news was saying that once again, America is in turmoil as all of its unhappy citizens riot against their oppressors. the black people hate the white people and everybody hates the government equally and everybody's dying. Did China instigate the George Floyd riots? I don't know.
No.
Or perhaps they just saw some division and jumped on it because that's what foreign intel agencies do.
Although the level they're talking about, yeah, who knows what gets stimulated behind the scenes. Because when you got money and you got control over the means of communication, a lot can be done on a stealth level. So yeah, he probably has something there. I haven't yet fully considered.
I don't think Russia told Candace to do it. And I know you lightly alluded to a theory that somehow her and I were getting paid by Russia or something. I can tell you from personal experience, that's absolutely not the case. So yeah, they jumped on it, but I don't think that takes away any of the validity of what.
Andrew Tate probably doesn't need the money when it comes to something like that.
She's doing. You're right in saying that absolutely everything is run by the intel agencies. That is correct. We're in a permanent and endless state of never-ending war. And America and Europe as a whole, their only chance of competing against China is to ally, especially China.
Peacetime is the gap between two warring factions or two wars.
Russia, now that they're so close. So I do believe that there has to be some degree in the European continent, some degree of interest. And I just think that perhaps, once again, I'm talking about feels and my instant thoughts when I saw your takedown of the Brigitte series. I just thought, is that really genuine from Nick or is that an attack? And once again, this is a personal decision. This is me speaking from my personality. I wasn't the one who was attacked by them like you were, but I have been attacked by a lot of people who I still currently talk to, work with, or promote because I think it's better for the larger fight. So I agree with everything you're saying. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I think we're better as a team if we can all manage to work together. I also think there's a degree of, Hollywood and arguments and fighting. All these things are very interesting to the Anon who never has to put his face anywhere. You're never based enough for the Anon account who has nothing to risk and nothing to lose. And these people are trying to instigate the endless wars, and they like that we all argue because for them it's entertaining. And it's also great for them to come and write on my posts or Ian Carroll's posts or anyone's posts and say, you mentioned the Jews 99 times, but you didn't mention them 100 times, so you're a Jew. It's like, okay, well, you have nothing to lose, and you also, nobody listens to you, and nothing you say actually matters. And if you're going to be up here like you are, you understand very well the importance of nuance. You understand very well the importance of picking your battles. You understand very well the importance of being funny. The only reason you're not in jail is because you're funny. And the only reason I'm not in jail is because I'm funny. And a lot of these people who want to say the same things we say can't be funny. And humor is a shield. And a lot of people don't understand that. They're not smart enough to discern that we get away with doing what we do because we're...
Damn. That is a damn fine detail he's just highlighted. It's some major points.
Funny with it. And there's a whole lot of things happening. And my point by and large for the Groypers is I believe in the movement. I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic if we all work together. I just highlighted that I didn't think it was genuine when you attacked the Brigitte thing, but you defended yourself and I accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been a minute. No, so I was fixing a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. The lag is gone. Apologize for that. And I know you guys wanted to talk this stuff out, so I just wanted to make sure, let y'all get, the Groyper stuff, Candace, Tucker. I know that's like pressing stuff. But do you guys want to hit anything else before I go into the questions or whatever? Or
no, I think we sort of resolved the main stuff so far. So yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah. So basically I got a couple questions here, and I think it'll be interesting because, we can sit here and talk about certain topics and stuff like that. But I think these questions will give people a better insight as to, your guys' mindset on some things. So what I'll do is I got these questions. I'll answer it first to give you guys time to, come up with your own things because some of them are pretty thought-provoking. So I'll kind of keep it simple. So the first one I was going to ask was, looking back, what book, person, or event red-pilled you, right? And how did that change the trajectory of your content or public persona? So for me, the thing that red-pilled me, and I kind of broke it down into categories. What red-pilled me on women was reading The Mystery Method and a book called Conquer Your Campus when I was like graduating from high school, getting ready to go to college. Like that's what red-pilled me on women, figuring out this, this whole thing about how important social status is to them and how They're looking for a small percentage of men. That's like when I found out about like the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, right? What red pilled me on the Jews was 9/11 and JFK, right? No matter how you slice and dice it, there was absolutely Israeli fingerprints all over 9/11, all over the JFK assassination, especially when you look at the nuclear weapon component, which is almost never mentioned in mainstream American media. Hell, even the movie JFK by Oliver Stone did everything in their power to omit the nuclear weapons angle. And then you find out that the movie was funded by a guy named Arnold Milchan, who was literally Israeli intelligence from the unacknowledged nuclear program. So like they had an incentive to keep that information from Americans. And this stuff has been like suppressed for a while. So that definitely red pilled me when it came to that. And then when it comes to money, real estate, usury, and basically central banking is what red pilled me on money. So I'll turn it to you guys. I mean, if you want to break it down in categories, you can. But those are the things that I would say red pilled me on those three topics.
I think it's fitting that we wrap up at this point as Myron's jumped back into the frame and Myron opened up the debate, and he's done a brilliant job on the back end, keeping everything running smoothly on the technical front. And the latter part of the stream that I caught, at least on YouTube, he jumps in more, so it's like a three-way dynamic, and we're in the Q&A part of the debate, and it's just as revealing as the earlier part of the whole discourse. I'm glad I didn't miss this earlier. It was definitely a moment in social media debates to digest while it was fresh and raw, and tons of penny drop moments. A lot of information revealed, got a much better idea of who these big characters are. Yeah, we all probably knew a bit about them individually, but as a collective, the three of them in one space together and hearing where they are, where they stand 2025 today, bringing everything up to date, some of the background beefs that's gone on with other journalists, content creators, personalities, commentators, like the Candices, the Tucker Carlsons, little tongue twisted there. Yeah, I think it was just very informative. So once again, for everybody on Facebook, thank you for checking out this video and taking time to watch this debate with us here at CornerSpeak, everybody here at YouTube, and those of you over there on Twitch. I'll be back again probably similar time tomorrow with more content. If you want to check out more of my content on CornerSpeak, please do so. Go to the channel, have a peruse through the playlists, the videos, some of the shorts, whatever suits your information likings. For now, I'd just like to say, as I usually do at this point in the proceedings, thank you again for spending time here at CornerSpeak. I just have to say that be good, be safe, and be creative, which is what I always say at this point in the proceedings. So, for now, leave your views in the comments, like the video if you can, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. But from myself, Owen Uedia here at CornerSpeak, so long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.